Hey, what's up everybody? You might remember this guy from my last Stardew Valley tutorial. Today we're going to be doing something a little different, a little more complicated. In celebration of Earth Day, we're going to be planting a tree. Okay, well, we're not planting it, we're going to be drawing it. But either way, by request from one of my subscribers and in celebration of Earth Day, here is the Stardew Valley inspired tree tutorial. Okay, so let's get started. First thing, new file. We want a width of 64 and a height of 128. RGBA, transparent like always. Hit OK. Okay, so now there are many methods to making a tree in the style of Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is relatively detailed for a pixel game. There's a lot of variations in color. The characters themselves are pretty basic, but the nature aspect of the game is very has a lot of color variations. So one way to tackle this challenge is to block it out, and you'll see what I mean. So we're gonna choose some colors right off the bat. Let's go with like a dark green for the leaves. We're gonna call this layer dark leaves. Okay, increase your brush size. And right around the middle, a little below the middle, we're going to start our shape. Our shape is going to be pretty basic, like an oval. And we're going to add some definition to that later. Next thing we want to block out is the trunk. So you're going to pick a brownish, orangish color, depending on how you want your tree to be. So we're going to put that over the dark leaves, because what we're going to do is create the branches that we're going to see. Not all the branches, just some branches that we're going to see. You don't have to go too crazy with this. Right, now block out the rest of the trunk. And just get a nice silhouette that you like. You can go straight up and down. You can make it a straight up and down tree, like a straight tree, that's fine. And like I said, we're not doing Stardew Valley exactly. We're taking inspiration from Stardew Valley. In Stardew Valley, the trunk is very tight, and it comes into like a square at the bottom. We're gonna make it a little more realistic, where the roots spread out like that. Yeah, it seems good for now. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer and call it just leaves. What we're doing here is we're going to take a brighter green color. I'm going to make my tree in like anywhere from like green to blue. That's going to be like my color shifting palette. So I'm going to start with like a bluish green for like the mid color leaves. And all we're going to do is start creating, this brush size is good. We're going to start creating shapes of leaves. the theory here is that we start out, the direction that we create the leaves is from the center. So from like the center of right here, we want it to ray out and fan out the direction of the leaves from this center point. They don't have to be perfect, because nature isn't perfect, you know that. But most of the leaves should be in this direction. Now, at the bottom of the tree, we can keep the leaves relatively separate. The dark background is going to come through a lot in the bottom of the tree. As we get to the top of the tree, we're going to keep our leaves more tightly packed, and this is going to serve us later when we start to add all the shading and the details. It's just one less step that we have to take to finish the tree. So as I go up a little bit, I'm going to start to compact the leaves a little bit more. Alright, now that we've reached the middle point, we're going to now make the leaves come out from this point. So they're going to fan out from this direction. And leave like a 1 pixel valley, like avenue, for the dark green background to shine through. If they touch, that's okay. And see, as I get to the top, it's going to kind of create this like crown. It looks like a crown. And then when we get to this point, everything's going to go around, but we also want the direction to go up to create, like I said, like this crown. We want them to be really tight here, almost touching. Not too much touching. And we can go in and erase to add some definition to these leaves, because we want definition. Like, that's one challenge about Stardew Valley. That's the graphics in Stardew Valley are challenging because there's a lot of definition and outlines and stuff like that, but there is also some detail. So we have to keep, we kind of have to make it messy with the detail, but keep it organized. And that, like any art, that is challenging. I mean, that's why digital painting is so challenging. That's why painting in general is so challenging. Because to keep those details while maintaining definition is the balance. Okay, I'm just going to go and freshen up a little bit of this, bring them in a little closer to each other. We don't want them too far apart in this mid area. The bottom, okay, that's fine. The mid area, we want them to be a little closer together. So I'm just going to close some of these gaps. Maybe add a few. I didn't like the way this crown part turned out, so I'm going to redo it a little bit. Okay, so that's that. Our next step is to do something a little like the dodge and brush tool. We're going to create our own dodge and brush tools using layers and opacity. So the next layer we're going to create is shadows, and the next layer after that we're going to create is highlights. Shadows can be straight black because we're going to turn down the opacity. So let's turn down the opacity to around 100. See how that looks. Let's turn it up a bit. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Alright, so now what we're going to do, we're going to shape the leaves. We want them to be emerging from the dark green background. So you see like this, you create a rounded edge so it appears that the leaf is emerging from the background. Just like so. Each leaf is poking out of the shadows, and it's going to have full shadow and then a touch of highlight coming out at the tip. We're just going to do this for all the leaves. It's okay if you mess up a little bit. You don't have to stay in the lines. The slight variation, like the slight mistakes that we make, will add a little bit of chaos to the mix, and we want some chaos. We don't want it perfect. We want some chaos. And if you notice now, some of the leaves are taking shape. A little line down the middle usually helps to show the eye that it is a leaf. Don't have anything to say right now. I'm just kind of zoning out because this takes a lot of time. This is probably one of the more tedious aspects of this. I guess towards the top we don't want so much shadow, but we still want a little bit. Just remember, everything's coming out of the center here. Let's zoom out a little bit so you can see. See, the leaves came out of the center and the shadow is coming out of the center. So that's how you should be shading. That's what you should be keeping in mind as you're shading and creating this tree. So everything's coming out of the center. Just like a light source. You keep a light source in mind, that a light source is toward the top right or the top left. Keep in mind that the the shadows are coming out of the center of this tree. Alright, and that's okay for now. We're going to come back and make all that work for us. So you can see that the shadows add quite a bit. Now let's go and do some highlights. Now for the highlights, we're not going to go straight white, because even at a lower opacity it washes it out and it doesn't look natural. So we're going to take a light green, maybe a little tinge of yellow. Make sure it's it's in the bright side of things, not washed out on the board here. Let's just go in and see how this all works. Now at the bottom we want it to be kind of like tips. Let's zoom out and see how that's looking. It looks decent. Can't be as liberal with the highlights as you can with the shadows. It's just the nature of highlights. Your eye knows that there's not too many highlights on things. So if you add too many or they're misplaced, your eye knows that you're trying to trick it. And we just want kind of like the edges of the leaf to be highlighted. And again, if we're a little messy and we get out of the lines or something goes a little strange, we're going to fix it later when we do the outline and we start to darken and lighten everything. We're going to clean it all up. Okay, that looks pretty good for now. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go underneath to the dark leaves layer. We're going to darken that even further. So select the color, turn all the layers on, increase the size of your brush, and then darken. So we're going to create this illusion that underneath the leaves is very dark towards the center. Okay. Now we have some definition in those leaves. We're looking pretty good here. We can go in and bring it down a little bit if we went too far. We can even create a little variation with a smaller brush, so it creates a little chaos, that chaos that I'm talking about. Not too much, just a little bit like that. Let's see how that looks. Okay. Now if you take a look, you can see that the edges are outlined. The darkest spots are towards the bottom, and the top doesn't have much dark spots, maybe in the center area and like right here. So we're going to try to correct this. The trunk, the branches are sticking out more than they should be. So we're going to darken those so they kind of blend in nicely. What we're going to do is we're going to outline them. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did with the dark leaves. We're going to darken it from the inside. Okay, so let's go to the shadows. No. Let's create a new layer. We call it trunk shadow. Take these off. Reduce the opacity to around 100. And start creating shadows for the leaves to play off of when they're shining through. We don't want too much of the branches to peek through. Just a little bit. A little couple of highlights here and there to showcase that they're still there and that the light is hitting them just right. And it's underneath the main leaves layer, so it won't distract from, it won't do anything. It won't do anything to the leaves. Alright. The leaves themselves need to be blended into the background more. So instead of doing the shadow, we're going to go back to the leaves and create some variation on those leaves. So we're going to pick a color that's in between this dark black background and this dark shade on the leaf. And we're going to start to hide the backs of those leaves even further. See, I'm a little too dark. But that's okay for the bottom. No, you know what? It's not okay. There we go. That's much better. And you see now how the shadow layer is going to give us a little variation in the colors. So it's not just a straight shade, which is excellent. If I wasn't clear, I went to the leaves layer. I went back to the leaves layer, and I'm adding a darker shade to the leaves to make them look like they're being pulled out of the shadow more. And because I have this shadow layer to work off of, when I put a dark color over it, it creates this variation so I don't have to add that. It's already created. Be more liberal towards the bottom with the shading, and then be a little more cautious toward the top. It's pretty much exactly what we were doing before. And the beauty of this is that you don't have to be exact. Like, we've set it up so you don't have to be exact. You still want to be cautious about what you're doing, but you don't have to place pixels like one by one, like every color is meant to be there. Like, no, like we created this organized chaos, which is what I like about this process. Let's zoom out a little bit, see where we're at. Alright, I kind of started closing in a little too much toward the middle, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. That should be good right here. I can just select this color again, this mid color, and close it back in if I'm not happy with the results. If I want it a little more. And then select it again. I gotta remind myself to be more cautious toward the top, because we don't want too much shading towards the top. These leaves are these top leaves are going to be our most highlighted leaves, and they're going to show the color shifting towards yellow to show that the sun is yellow. The highlight will always show what time of day it is. So if you want it to be like a normal time of day, do like a yellow highlight. If you want it to be a sunset, do an orange highlight. If you want it to be like a dark moon, like a blue moon, do a blue highlight. Okay, I'm relatively happy with this so far. We're going to do the same thing for highlights now. So on the leaves layer, select the highlight, bring it up even further, and start highlighting again. with the highlights, we want the edges. And this is just like painting. If you've ever painted, you know that it takes patience, confidence that it will come out okay. You want to add layers. Like, that's all you're doing. You're adding layers of highlight and layers of shading. Getting comfortable with how much of each is a talent. It's a skill. I am not saying I have this skill. I'm just saying that I'm aware of it. So I try my best to stay confident, stay patient, that my eyes are seeing what they are, that they're seeing the truth. That's all you can do. As an artist, that's all you can do. Just trust that your eyes are not failing you. Okay, now we're going to do the outline, which is going to be a dark green towards the bottom and a light green towards the top. We're going to create a new layer for our outline. Top layer, so it is not affected by our shadows. This outline will bring everything closer together. We still might have some adjusting to do, but this outline will show us where we're at. You can modify the outline to fill in later. So if you want some leaf definition, alright, I almost forgot. The top should not be this dark. Let's bring it back a little bit. I mean, it should still be dark, just not as dark as the bottom. About the halfway point, we can stop. And I forgot again. I get too zoned out. So let's do the dark outline at the bottom. Sometimes I feel like that's the only way to accomplish all this tedious stuff, is just to zone out. The bad part is that you forget what you're doing sometimes. Oh, the outline adds so much. It always does. It just adds so much to this already. I'm pretty happy with this already, and there's still some stuff to do. Excuse me. Alright, so the leaves are looking pretty tasty. I think we can afford to darken a little bit more, just a little bit, like a little bit. Just a tiny bit. Just a little chaos. And again, this is on the leaves layer. The reason why I said that I need a little chaos, in case you were wondering, is because this this shade right here seems to be popping out a lot. I don't know if you could tell, but like this color is prevalent throughout the whole thing, and when we have more definition, more color variations, like in the center, it becomes much more realistic, like eye-popping. You see what I just did there? There was a pretty dark space in there, so I just used the same exact color to fill it in to create like a leaf that's just kinda there, just a little tiny bit, poking its head out. I'm going to modify this dark leaves layer. Because I felt like it's too black right in the center. Just right in the center. Let's do a little experiment here and see what it looks like with a highlight on the dark leaves layer. I'm not sure how that's going to look, but let's just find out. Yeah, I can deal with that actually. That looks good. What do you think? Yeah, now we got some good definition. Okay, now the final touch for the leaves is the color shifted highlight. We can go blue. Obviously this isn't it, but I'm just showing you how it could look. Or we're going to go yellow. just going to fill in these little gaps here that I forgot to fill in before. There we go. Okay. So we're going to create a new layer above highlights. I don't know, call it shift. That doesn't matter. Go to the highlight color, shift it to yellow, brighten it a little bit, and we'll see how this works. Our color, our extreme highlight is just dots. It's just pixels. There's no being crazy with it. It's just you place it. If you're crazy with it, it will look unrealistic. Just sometimes it's just one dot. We do want more concentrated dots towards the center of the leaves of the tree, and we want them on the edges of the leaves towards the existing highlights. And let's see how that's looking. Yeah, that looks great. And like everything in this project, the farther away we get from the top center, the less of these highlights we're going to have. One dot here and there, just to make your eye enjoy the... I don't know how to put that sentence. I don't know how to finish that sentence. I feel like this is like the final touch, and it just makes everything just so enjoyable. It makes it real. It's like it's almost like it validates every single leaf. That's what it is to me. I shifted back to the leaf layer. To even add some even more to add even more dark contrast. I'm breaking up the leaves towards the bottom with a very dark with the very dark leaf color, creating like I said, more contrast, bringing everything out just a tiny bit more. And there is something There is such a thing as overworking your project. You have to watch out for that. But I feel like this is necessary. The top, because what it is the top gets that nice highlight to bring that out. The bottom needs something to bring that out as well, but obviously without a highlight. Something happened right here. It looks squirrely. I don't know what happened there. I'm going to separate these leaves. Okay, I am happy with this. Now we have to do the bark, the trunk, which is kind of like the same thing. First thing we're going to do is create the dark shade. Whoops, I'm in the wrong layer. Trunk shadow. No, not trunk shadow, just trunk. Okay, so we do the shadow like so. We'll come back and fix this up a little bit. Do the highlight, just the base highlight. Okay, so now we have our three colors, our three shades and tints. Now we can do the outline. The outline on the back of the tree is going to be very dark. And the outline on the front of the tree is going to be something like the middle color. didn't like the way that looked. Sorry. We're going to create a little variation. We're going to intrude into the middle color with the highlight. Just a bit, not too much. And then the same for the shadow. We're going to intrude, create shapes, like spikes and whatever else. Bark is very vertical most of the time. There's always going to be a little light catch on bark because it's so rough, textured. Now we're going to go back to trunk shadow. It's all black. Bring it up a little bit. I'm going to add that variation. And then trunk highlight. It's going to be the brightest color, a little bit brighter. Turn that down. There we go. Yeah, there's such thing as too much, and I did it. I'm going to erase some. Okay, now we're going to erase the edges. Erase the highlights. That escape the edges. We're going to give this a quick background. New layer, bottom, BG. You do like a grass or a sand background, whichever you prefer. What happened to our... Oh, that's fine. Our outline disappeared at the top because this is the exact same color. So let's do that. Let's clean up the edges. We're going to give the trunk some color shifted highlights. Just a touch. we're going to go to the chunk shadow, go all the way black, create the shadow from the leaves so it doesn't look like it's just floating. It actually exists. And I think we have a pretty decent tree. Obviously it's not perfect, nothing ever is, but I think this is pretty darn good. One more touch. Alright, and that's that. There's your Stardew Valley inspired tree. I really hope you enjoyed that tutorial. That one was a lot of fun to make. I learned a lot, so I hope you learned something. Before I go, I want to make one announcement, and that is I'm going to be uploading, or trying my very best to upload every Saturday. Instead of trying to cram in a couple videos a week, getting bogged down, getting stressed out with everything I have going on right now, I'm just going to do one video every Saturday. I'd love to hear your feedback and some requests for some videos. Alright guys, that does it for this video. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. You can click my logo right down there. If you want to see another Stardew Valley tutorial, you can click over there. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter under the name ETO Survival. Alright, thank you guys. I'll see you in the next video.